Okay? I'm sitting down to do this. I usually don't sit down, but this is about the post traumatic stress. And I usually do it in front of about 150 people or more because I do victims impact panels. And things changed for me again in 1969. This is my best friend, Jim Barshinsky, and his wife, Jackie. And Jim wanted to walk off the war. He just got back from Vietnam, and he spent most of his time in Cam Bay, and his job duty was putting people in body bags. And this particular day, April 16th, 1969, my sister's birthday, I didn't go along with him for the walk. He's walking along Highway 32 in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, basically on the sidewalk, and he saw a car coming and pushed 3 girls out of the way of the oncoming car. That's what I was told by the police department. Jim was hit by the drunk driver that was on the sidewalk. He ended up on the hood of the car, and the guy would speed up and put his brakes on, speed up and put his brakes on, trying to shake the body off of the hood. Jim was still alive. Somebody got the car to stop. They drove in front of him or whatever. And Jim was taken to Trinity Memorial Hospital, which is St. Luke's Hospital now. And I got the phone call. I went to Trinity Memorial Hospital where Jim was going through brain surgery. And I waited until he came out. And I stayed with him until he passed away about 4 hours later. Jim maybe weighed about 120, 130 pounds, and he looked like he weighed about 300 pounds after impact with the car. His body swelled up all over. His head was shaved because of the brain surgery. And he was supposed to be my best man at my wedding. So we move on from there. And I got married in 1969 in October. And I had a good life with my wife. I was a mechanic. And I worked at this gas station at Jerry Standard. And she worked second shift at St. Luke's Hospital. She was a nurse. 1973. And we went out to eat after we got off of work. I picked her up and we went out to eat. On the way home, I saw a car coming from behind me at a high rate of speed. He had his headlights on, high beams on. So I put my car in the ditch. He was on 76th Street in Franklin, in between Rawson and Drexel, which was farm fields back then. And he followed my taillights. Straight road, speed limit was 40 miles an hour. He hit us at 110. I might have been doing 5 miles an hour when we were hit. My car rolled bumper to bumper 3 times, spun, 4 times, spun, and then went 3 more times door to door. I traveled over 500 feet after impact. Thomas Gimler continued in the ditch, over a culvert, back down in the ditch, over another culvert and up on somebody's front lawn, came close to hitting the house. A couple of motorists went by, and I waved and jumped up and down because my wife was thrown out of the car and laying in the field. And they didn't stop. Went across the street to a farmhouse and woke the woman up. I was asking her for help so she could call an ambulance. An ambulance arrived at Thomas Gimler's car. The police arrived at Thomas Gimler's car. They didn't even know he hit anybody. And I limped, ran down, and got the attention of the police, and his ambulance came back down to where my wife was laying. She had a big cut in her head. So they put her in the ambulance and went back to St. Luke's Hospital. Here's a picture of my Beetle. I don't have a frame for this one. And that's a 72 Super Beetle. 71 Super Beetle. This is a picture of Thomas Gimler's car, Oldsmobile 442. The hood on his car was sheared off when it hit my car. And his car traveled over 1,500 feet after impact with mine. So everything changed again. My wife is in the hospital with a broken back. She was paralyzed from the chest down. Her back was broken in 6 places, T4 through T6. So everything changed again. I kind of knew what to do because of Walter Kropke, because he was paralyzed from the waist down. But she had no control over her stomach muscles because she was paralyzed from here down. She still had use of her hands and arms. So decisions had to be made, and I got rid of our apartment and moved back with my parents because I knew that she was going to be living with my parents after she got out of the hospital. She was in the hospital for approximately 6 months and got another infection, went back to the hospital for 6 weeks, and they recommended doing a urostomy soon after because she had kidney stones, and they gave her medication for the kidney stones, and that worked, but she was allergic to the medication and all of her hair fell out. That grew back later. But she had the urostomy done, and Then after she got out of the hospital again and she became pregnant and she had my son. This is a picture of Lois. And this is a picture of my son and her. I think he was 3 years old, maybe 4. Then she had a colostomy done. That's to collect stool. Urostomy was to collect urine. And I became her nurse. We lived with my parents for about a year, got a house, and out of Muskego, which was about 18 miles away. I had to stop being a mechanic because the tools kept on falling out of my hands, and I was also fired from Westport VW. The reason I was fired is because I took off to take care of my son when my wife went through gallbladder operation and some other stuff that was taken care of. And I took off, and when I came back, they fired me. When I went into the office, they said basically this: come to work and divorce your wife, or you get fired. So I left. I couldn't do that. So I had to find another job. I worked for Elmbrook Refrigeration for a while, and then there was an opportunity to either take 2 jobs. One was working for the Waukesha Sheriff's Department, driving cars back and forth to get repaired, and then eventually become the mechanic there. And I'm going, I need something a little bit easier. And the other opportunity was becoming a security officer at Muskego High School, which I did. I knew that I could handle that and handle the kids because of some of the volunteer work when I did when I was younger. I worked as a volunteer at a park for disabled kids. They had Down syndrome, and some of them were deaf, and some of them were missing limbs from, I can't remember the name, but there were all different types of illnesses, hydrocephalic, etc. The one girl had both of her legs missing completely, and I saw her in the pool, and she was running on her hands and then dove in, but she was having fun. Anyway, I started working at Muskego High School and enjoyed that work and got along very well with the staff and administration and the kids. The reason why I got liked quite a bit by the kids is because they'd park their cars in the morning and they'd leave their headlights on. I'd get them out of class. Some of them would lock their keys in the car, and I was already a little bit of a locksmith already, and I became more of one later. I joined the Locksmith Association in Chicago because the cars kept changing, and the Locksmith Association had classes that you could take. and the cars got different. So I learned how to pick the locks on Ford. That was easy. Using the Slim Jim, etc., to get the doors open on other cars. A lot of the foreign cars, you could pick the locks as well. So that worked out extremely well. So that's what this whole shop is about. I had to start doing this work more so. I needed an engine for my car, and I'd build one. And I'd buy cars for $10, $15, up to $150. And we drive those cars because we couldn't afford anything else at that particular time, because the bills started rolling in, and that was hospital bills. Those hospital bills kept on mounting up, and it was costing approximately $10,000 a year, where it wasn't covered by insurance. Working at the high school was a godsend in many ways, because I don't know exactly why, but every 4 years they would change health insurance companies. So I would be on their insurance. And over the 33 and a half years that she lived, the insurance changed, so I didn't have to change jobs again, because the insurance companies paid out $4 million to keep her alive, and we paid out around $375,000. The doctors told me if I wouldn't have taken care of her for the 33 and a half years she lived, it would have been about 8 to 10 years if she went into a nursing home. Well, that wasn't going to happen. I already knew that from Holler Park, because I visited some of those kids in the nursing homes. And the biggest thing at that particular time for them is having a spoon so they could feed themselves. I don't know why they weren't allowed to have forks or knives, but that's what they used. Now I think they're allowed to have that. Many different infections. I became her nurse, and I knew when she would have to go into the hospital. That's the only time that we have a discussion about she didn't want to go, but she had to go. I couldn't do the wound care any longer. She had abscess and what have you, wounds. Took care of them the best I could, debrided them, put the creams and everything on. Sometimes I got them healed, sometimes I didn't. So then they had to do a rotation flap, because the bone would want it to work its way through the butt. She had one infection, took her to one hospital, because there was a moratorium on taking her to St. Luke's. They kept her for about 2 days, I guess, and they transferred her to St. Luke's Hospital. And St. Luke's Hospital kept her for about 2 weeks, and she came home, and we ran IVs at home. You can't do that anymore, but at that time it was legal. And that was an antibiotic that we ran, and that was for 2 weeks. That 2-week period of running the antibiotics, that cost $2,000. but she got the infection over with and things cleared up. VNA would come in and make sure that I was doing things properly. Another infection and different things over the years. It's usually about 3 years, and then back in the hospital. All the hospital stays were more than 6 months at a crack. So I could do what I wanted to in the basement. That kept me busy. And I'll go through that at a different time as far as the shop is concerned. In 1999, she got another infection, which I didn't know right away. She said she had a cold and she didn't feel good, and I made her a doctor's appointment. Went in to wake her up for the doctor's appointment on Monday, and she was incoherent. She didn't know what she was doing, and I had to call an ambulance. Call the ambulance. They arrived. They took her to St. Luke's, and they came out and they said that she's septic in her right leg. And I'm going, great. So they got the team together of 6 different doctors, got her antibiotics. Then she had to have the surgery done. And that was a complete amputation of the right leg. Cutting it off at the knee, removing the bone, and then doing a rotation flap with her leg and sewing it all up. She had that done later. She was in ICU, took her down to have it done. I got paged. I talked to Dr. Lowenstein, and he said, I'm sorry we can't do the amputation right now because her left leg also has to be done. He saw a little spot on the opposite side, and that was all septic. So both legs had to be completely amputated. That was done in 2000, in January. I know I might be missing a bunch of different things, but it's difficult to talk about. I know what I did and how I got things done. So she was in the hospital for 9 months, and then to a nursing home for rehabilitation so she could use her sliding board and what have you. That didn't accomplish anything. She was only there for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then back home again. During that particular time period, my father was also sick. He had mesothelioma from asbestos cancer. So I was running back and forth from Muskego to Milwaukee before she even had the amputations done. And after my father passed away, I sold the house in Muskego and bought my mother's house because of running back and forth to the hospital and different things. It made it a shorter distance. Working for the high school, I worked different hours because I'd be there in the morning on Monday and work a full day. And then on Tuesday, there might be a basketball game for the girls or a basketball game for the boys. Wrestling on Wednesday. Thursday was a complete day. Friday was basketball, wrestling, whatever. and I would do those particular games at night. Football games were always during the day because they didn't have lights. It was after school. And I would take care of different things, make sure that the parking lot was okay. Nobody left their headlights on or anything like that. And simple. Also catching some of the kids that were drinking in cars, etc., or drug use. And I'm skipping over quite a bit. Because it takes a bit out of me to do this. So, about 3 years later, well, actually, she got septic, and about 3 or 4 months later, she got septic again, and then about a year later, she got septic again. And the antibiotics destroyed her kidneys. She went into kidney failure. So she went on kidney dialysis. There were several times at the hospitals that the septic blew open at the hospital the one time, and it happened twice at home. You don't want to smell it, and you don't want to see it. She had a wound on her side, not a bed sore, a wound. She had metaports up in her chest, and those metaports, you put a line in, start an IV, and one of the nurses put one of the plastic tape over her side, and when she took it off, she didn't use any adhesive remover, and that created a wound, very small. Could not control that wound. I tried everything, including the charcoal pump and everything else. It got to the point where you could see her ribs. Had Dr. Lowenstein close that up. I thought I did a really good job on debriding, and Lowenstein had a Japanese doctor do the debriding. It looked like she went in there with a microscope and got it all done, and that healed up. Finally, the kidney dialysis failed. This is over a 6-month period, a 6-year period of time from the septic when it started and all of the rest of the stuff that happened. She spent approximately 2 years at home over that 6-year period, but you had to add up all the days because she was in and out of the hospital and in and out of the hospital. The urostomy went out of control. It had a bleed. Well, it had several bleeds over the years, but this was a bad one. It filled up the urostomy bag with blood. I had over a pint of blood in the urostomy bag and took her to the hospital. And they found a ulcerated area about 3 inches in. And that took 6 months she was in the hospital. They couldn't find the bleed. They put the borescope in, and they're trying to find it. They'd stop it by putting a catheter in, and that would stop the bleed, but they couldn't find the abscessed area because the borescope, when they put it in, they passed it. Finally found it and did the surgery. Then the colostomy started doing the same thing. I was laying down and she yelled at me, and I was in the bedroom. She was in the living room in a hospital bed because I didn't want her put away, hidden in the bedroom. Anybody that came in could come in and say hello to her and what have you, and enjoy her company if they wanted to. So anyway, I got up out of bed, ran down the hallway, because she said that she had blood over her hands. So I went and I looked, and it was a mucus fistula on the colostomy. That was a slice that was put into her stomach, and that is to get rid of the air or farting, whichever you want to call it. The ambulance arrived, and they say, where was she bleeding? And I had a towel over the whole top of it. I already had about 4 pints of blood in the bed, and they looked at it and they said, did you stab her? No, I didn't stab her. That's a mucus fistula. Get her to the hospital, and they'll explain it to you when you get to the hospital, exactly what that is. So they gave her antibiotics, and they got it to stop, and she was sent home. I don't remember the amount of time. And it happened again when I got her up to go to see a doctor. She had a doctor's appointment. Called an ambulance again. I already had her. I got her up and put her in the wheelchair and started bleeding. So I'm trying to stop the bleeding, trying to dial a phone, and waiting for the ambulance to come. And they took her to the hospital again. And the doctor said, well, we'll try and see what is going on. And I went and I did a victims impact panel up in the Devil's Lake area. And I got a phone call up there because they knew where I was. And she had to go through emergency surgery because it blew open again when she was in ICU. And they finally took care of that. They finally found it. There are so many different things. But her kidneys failed. And they came and they told me that she would have to be put on hospice. And they were going to set it up where she could come home. But they said that she was too bad, so she had to stay at the hospital on hospice. They didn't want to move her. And she passed away March 30th of 06. I know that's a lot to go through. And I give back. Even though all of the stuff that we went through, and Thomas Gimler was forgiven for what he did. He said he was sorry. He didn't look like he was sorry when I talked to him and the lawyer, but he said he was sorry. The victims impact panels, this one was the first deal on restorative justice, the community center. And this one here is a Speaker of the Year award from MAD out of Illinois. I went down to Springfield and went to the dinner and got this. I never saw so many police officers in my life in Springfield, because they were there for awards as well, doing what they do. I don't know if there was 400 or 500 police officers at that dinner being presented awards, some of them, and some of them were there to see the awards given. Very, very different. My son has autism. So that also hindered me a little bit, but at least I knew what to do. I knew that he had a problem, and his problem was basically communicating with others. And I worked with him over and over again. And he was brilliant when it comes to computers. So I told him to go to MATC and get his degree, but he was insistent on going to UWM. And I said, no, you go there and then go to MSOE. And no, he wanted to go to UWM. It didn't work out too well. He did go for 1 year and came home. I said, you need the social skills. Let's work on that. And I got him a job working at a restaurant. And that helped him with his social skills. The people he worked for and with the customers. Then he went back to school again and got his associate degree for computer security. Then went to MSOE, Milwaukee School of Engineering, and got his bachelor's degree. We're still working on that because he doesn't drive. He doesn't want to hurt anybody like his mother was. And he's still living at home. He's here with his girlfriend and her son. Things are working out halfway decent with that. And he went back to school again to see if he could work from home, because Target offers a program for additional education. And he did that. He started that in July and ended it in December, and starting another class. So he has more technical skills. And that was done online, and it was done from Cornell University. And he got 100%. So things are looking up. And once he graduates, or not graduates, but gets a little bit more education, maybe this will work out with the second part, which is another 3 months worth of schooling. Now I hope you understand, and I'll do a tour of the shop later and explain the shop, not on this video. And I will do more VW instructional videos as well. There's a lot to do around here and a lot to explain. There's hundreds of things, not just a couple of things. And I thank you so much for listening, and I hope things go okay. Bye for now.